Welcome. Here is a selection of 10 of the unluckiest deaths people have endured throughout history. Part 10. In 1755, Henry Hall was 94 years old and still working as a lighthouse keeper at the Eddystone Lighthouse in southern England when a spark ignited the lighthouse roof. He and his fellow keepers fought the fire valiantly by throwing buckets of water over their heads onto the blazing roof. At one point, Henry came to a halt to assess the progress of the firefighting efforts when the molten lead roof poured down onto him and into his open mouth, straight down his throat. The men abandoned the fight and sought refuge in a nearby sea cave. They were eventually rescued, and Henry sought medical attention. Aside from his obvious burns, he appeared to be in good health to the doctor caring for him. When he died 2 weeks later, an autopsy was performed, and more than 7 ounces of lead were discovered in his stomach. This is the piece of lead found in Henry Hall's stomach, and it's kept in the National Museum of Scotland. Part 9. The only dead man who has ever won a horse race, depending on how you look at it. This death was either unlucky or fortunate. On June 4, 1923, Irish jockey Frank Hayes was riding his horse, Sweet Kiss, in a steeplechase at Belmont Park Racetrack in New York. Frank suffered a fatal heart attack in the final stages of the race, but he did not fall off the horse, which went on to win the race. Hayes' death was discovered when race officials tried to congratulate him on his first victory. Part 8. After a plane crash landed in San Francisco, a 16-year-old girl survived only to be run over and killed by one of the rescue fire trucks. On July 6, 2013, she was traveling on Asiana Airlines Flight 214 with a group of 35 teachers and students from Jiangshan, China to California when the accident happened. After the plane crash landed and caught fire at San Francisco Airport, she was flung out of the plane. Unfortunately, although she survived the plane crash, she suffered multiple blunt force injuries moments later after being struck by one of the fire rescue vehicles. She was lying on the ground and possibly covered in foam which was being sprayed on the plane to douse the fire when it happened. Part 8. Sigurd the Mighty was a Norse nobleman and the second Earl of Orkney, who by the end of the 9th century had defeated and beheaded his foe, Maelbrigt, in a battle in Scotland. Sigurd then triumphantly rode away, tying his dead opponent's severed head to his horse's saddle. Brig's protruding teeth scraped Sigurd's leg while riding, causing a severe infection that eventually killed the Viking warrior. Maelbrigt, also known as Bucktooth, had his revenge in the end. Part 6. In 1871, a U.S. lawyer and politician was defending a man accused of murder. His defense centered on the possibility that the victim shot himself accidentally rather than being shot by his client. So, to prove his theory, he grabbed a weapon and demonstrated how the mishap could have occurred. In doing so, he accidentally shot himself, successfully demonstrating how the victim could have done it. Even though the lawyer died, his client was acquitted. This was certainly a case of one committed lawyer. Part 5. An explosion at a chemical plant in Tarragona, Spain, launched a large metal plate that killed a man 3 kilometers 2 miles away. The man, identified only as Sergio, was in his apartment when the 1-ton object struck, causing a portion of the building to collapse onto him. Residents of Torreforta's housing estate, where the man was killed, described seeing a ball of fire stream across the sky at the time of the incident. Firefighters later confirmed that the explosion had been that fierce it had propelled the 1-ton piece of metal plate 2 miles, smashing into Sergio's home. Part 4. Dancer Isadora Duncan's love of flowing scarves led to her death in a car accident in Nice, France. In 1927, Duncan was a passenger in a brand new Amilcar CGSS convertible sports car that she was learning to drive on the day she died. As she leaned back in her seat to enjoy the sea breeze, her massive red scarf blew into the rear wheel well on the passenger side. It wrapped around the axle, squeezing Duncan's neck and dragging her out of the car and onto the cobblestone street. The force Isadora was propelled from the sports car broke her neck and she died instantly. Part 3. In Texas in 1883, after dating Charla Karras for 5 years, Henry Ziegland decided to leave her. Charla was devastated by this and committed suicide as a result. James Karras, her brother, was so enraged that he decided to murder Henry Ziegland. Whilst Henry was tending to his horses in his barn, James crept in, pulled out a gun, and shot Henry. The bullet only grazed his cheek before embedding into a tree behind his barn. Henry played dead, and thinking that he had successfully avenged his lost sister, James then killed himself. Fast forward 20 years, Henry planned to cut down the tree in front of his barn on June 5, 1903. Henry tried to cut it down with an axe, but thinking this would take too long, he decided to blow up the tree with dynamite instead. So he strapped 3 sticks of the explosive to it and lit them. The tree exploded, and the bullet that was encased inside from when James shot it 20 years previously was propelled into Henry's head, instantly killing him. I'm not sure Henry deserved this fate, but James got his revenge in the end. Part 2. Charles II reigned as King of Navarre beginning in 1349. Almost as soon as he became king, he earned another title, Charles the Bad, for his duplicitous dealings and ruthless pursuit of power. If legends about Charles the Bad's death are to be believed, his death was just as bad as his life. By 1387, Charles, aged 54, was seriously ill and infirm, confined to his palace in Pamplona, allegedly worn out by his wicked life. Doctors were called in, and the bedridden king was given a body wrap of linen soaked in brandy. At bedtime, the king was to be sewn into this alcoholic shroud so that the alcohol's purported curative properties could work their magic. When she was finished, the maid in charge of sewing the king's wrappings looked for something to cut the thread with. There were no scissors on hand. As an alternative, the woman used a candle flame. Unsurprisingly, the alcohol-soaked cloth caught fire immediately. The maid fled, terrified by both the events and her own foolishness, leaving the trapped king to burn to death in his own bed. Part 1. George Spencer Millet worked for an insurance company in New York's Madison Square. On Millet's 15th birthday, February 15, 1909, the female stenographers in his office promised that when the workday ended, they would kiss him once for every year of his age. They kept their word and descended on Millet at 4:30 p.m. to deliver the anticipated smooches. Millet tried to wriggle away and was heard exclaiming, "I'm stabbed." During the ensuing commotion, Millet was taken to New York Hospital in an ambulance, but he died on the way due to his injuries. Millet had been holding an ink eraser, not a rubber blot, but a 6-inch long metal tool that resembled a knife, just before the office kiss fest. Millet's eraser was in his pocket when the stenographers surrounded him. During the commotion, he fell forward, and the eraser's sharp point pierced his heart. Millet was laid to rest in the Bronx's Woodlawn Cemetery. This is George's gravestone, and it was engraved with the description of his unlucky death. Thank you for watching Now Like Facts. Please like and subscribe for future content.